I was in Los Angeles recently, continuing my filming for this white-collar crime documentary, and the producer asked me a question like, so what are some nuances or things that stand out from working with so many white-collar defendants since 2008? Like, what are they like? What are some things that, and I'm like, wow, good question. I began to rattle off the answers, and while rattling off these answers, I was thinking to myself, this would be a good video to film. I hope I remember it. Then when I was on a cruise with my family, the producer, Paul, if you're watching, you're awesome, dude. Thank you. Paul sent me a little snippet of this part of the documentary with my answers that I now remember, and I'm going to share in this video. Before I get into them, thank you for coming to the White Collar Advice channel. We create this content to help you. We know your most valuable asset is time, and I'm going to work to prove worthy of it. And please like and comment and subscribe while you're here. The first thing I said in this documentary was it's harder to mitigate guilt if someone really doesn't think they did anything wrong. Super easy. I don't know, easy. Easier for me to go to prison because I did it. There was no kind of gray here. No gray. It's black and white. I did it. So it's easier to endure the pain of my own bad choices because I broke the law. But many people will plead guilty and feel as if the biggest crime they have committed is pleading guilty. And that's a problem. It's very difficult for them to sign a plea agreement because they don't have resources to go to trial. Even if they think they're innocent, they're convinced they're going to lose. Someone in our community reached out and said, I'm only pleading guilty because they're threatening to indict my 2 children who were part of the Medicare billing practice. So it's a problem. So in my experience, it could be harder to mitigate when someone pleads guilty, but they don't think they did anything wrong because our team begins to create a message for stakeholders, and they read that message and they think, well, it's not all factual. It's not all right. The government got this wrong. But I'm like, but it's in your plea agreement. We've got to own and understand what they want to hear from you. It's not about you. It's about victims. It can be very, very difficult. Number 2, I think it is incorrect. You see these Bernie Madoff movies and things like that. Look, people do not go in business with intentions to defraud. I would argue 1 in 1,000 go to medical school or business school and say, today, I'm going into practice to steal from people and take advantage of people and create victims. It's 1 in 1,000. The lion's share of people have good intentions when they go into business. And that is the case with everyone. Like 99.999% of people who come into our community are good people who made bad choices in an out of character moment. If you were to look in our community, the length of time the fraud went on, it is not extended out over a period of someone's career. It's a snippet or a period of time where they gave in to temptation, made bad choices, and they're enduring the fallout of it. But I am convinced, as much as I am convinced of anything, the lion's share of people who come to our community had good intentions. Number 3, and this one is difficult for some people to embrace. Some people forget about or lose the traits that made them very successful. We have worked with people who have small businesses that do a few $100,000 a year, a few $1 million a year in business, some that do $1 billion and plus a year in business and employ tens of thousands of people. And at times, once they become immersed in a government investigation, they feel impotent to take action or change their life. When they were building a business, 100-hour work weeks, holding people accountable, having tough conversations, doing the work on days you would probably want to do something else, and you wake up years and decades later and it's like, boom, I have a wonderful business. Some defendants going through this process forget about the things that helped make them successful. And too many sit around all day waiting for something to happen, waiting for the lawyer to call, waiting for some good news, afraid to make that phone call to someone to tell them about their case or what they're learning from it or what's going to happen next. That's difficult. So I would encourage all of you, think about what you have done to become successful. And if you can do those things while traversing a government investigation, you're going to be more successful because what you did to build a business, taking action on a daily basis and holding yourself accountable, looking towards the end and reverse engineering your way back. If you can do the same thing here, granted with different stakeholders, it might not be shareholders in this case. The stakeholder here could be a probation officer, prosecutor, or judge. But if you can do that, you're going to be more successful. Another thing, there's this, I think, presumption that people who get into trouble make it all about themselves and they're manipulative and conniving because they've been convicted of a white-collar crime. To the contrary, in our experience, so many people who come into our community, they're remorseful, they're authentic, and they do want to find meaning through this experience and give back. And community service has been something that our team has contributed to through Prison Professors Charitable Corporation. But whether it's our nonprofit or another nonprofit organization, we have found so many people willing to get involved, contribute, and give back and build a record that conveys to a judge in an authentic manner, Your Honor, I'm ashamed. I had opportunities many people in this courtroom did not. I am trying to find meaning through this experience. For that reason, I reached out on XYZ date to begin volunteering through this nonprofit organization. Indeed, last year when Michael Santos, my partner, was profiled on the homepage of the BOP website, we had so many people come into our, not the white collar advice community, come into the Prison Professors Charitable Organization community, calling Michael and asking, hey, I was on the BOP website learning about prison. I saw this article. How can I get vested and involved? That's truly wonderful. I see so few defendants, and this is a good thing, try to oversell the community service work. And I saw that at a sentencing hearing a long, long time ago. Good God, like in 2015, a lawyer and the defendant were overselling the fact that this defendant once or twice a month was going to the soup kitchen in Los Angeles to serve food. And the judge was like, yes, I saw the probation report for Miss Flores where you go. He was holding the thumb up. Where you go to the soup kitchen once a week, you're truly changing the world. And it's like, oh, that wasn't cool. The judge is not a fan of the community service work. It was oversold. They were trying to get too much value from it. If you have good intentions and you want to give back, it's going to help you. And as I articulate in this documentary, the majority of people have good intentions and want to give back. It helps others. And yes, it tends to help themselves. Number 5. Here's the kind of the paradox. Some people plead guilty, but it's difficult to mitigate because they don't think they did anything wrong. The best mitigation at times comes from someone who is actually convicted at trial, don't believe they did anything wrong, convicted, but they go all in to mitigate. I'm going to put up a screenshot of a client of ours who was convicted at trial. The judge later acquitted him. We're going to do some more work with our client. Phenomenal mitigation. When he called us, he said, I'm convicted. I don't think I did anything wrong, but I know I have a sentencing hearing coming. I better mitigate. What can I do to convey to the judge that I'm different than the government's version of events? And he went all in. The beautiful thing is he doesn't have a sentencing hearing upcoming. But throughout our years of doing this, people convicted at trial fully embrace mitigation in a way that I wish people who plead guilty and who don't think they did anything wrong would absolutely do. Number 6, misplaced focused, and I was guilty of this as well. When a number of defendants find us, they're not like Googling how to prepare for a sentencing hearing. What do I convey to a federal judge to get a shorter sentence? How do I prepare for the probation interview? Those aren't heavily searched terms. It's usually, what is prison like? What are the showers like in prison? What is my job going to be like? So many people come into our community, might schedule a call with our team, just got indicted, have their first hearing upcoming, and it's like, what is prison like? So we need to reel them in and help them identify, like, what is your primary focus right now? It ain't standing for count or the food or showers in federal prison. That might come, and if you get there, we'll help you understand it. It's what can you do today? So misplacing their focus is an issue that we have seen. Number 7, I articulated in this documentary, there is no doubt there are some people who are more predisposed than others to do the work. That's in some very difficult circumstances. People in our community who have lost their job, lost their income, the fallout that follows this process, yet still find a way to do the work. And I would argue some are just more predisposed to do the work than others. Number 8, I talked a lot in this documentary about accountability and not fully holding people they might hire accountable, and they buy into utter nonsense. For example, someone recently called and said they had given their lawyers a 7-figure retainer, and they go through this process, and the lawyer continues to articulate there is no value to mitigate because you have a judge that is simply going to rubber stamp the government's version of events. And rather than asking questions like, well, are you telling me this judge never departs, which of course the judge will and has departed? Is there nothing I can do to try to convey to other stakeholders why I'm different? Could this mitigation work impact me? Maybe not to the degree that you suggested sentencing, but down the road. He didn't ask those questions. Another question could have been, why am I giving you $1 million retainer if there's nothing I can do to influence the outcome? If the judge is going to rubber stamp it, what's the value of hiring you, my man? Didn't ask those questions. Instead, it's, hey, was told if I have a different judge, things would have gone differently. There's apparently nothing that I can do to mitigate. It's a shame rather than buy into that nonsense. And we've heard a lot of this since 2008, tons of it. Rather than buy into that, it probably makes more sense for people to ask better questions. And it's surprising how many of them are afraid to do that. But too many in our experience, if I may speak directly, they cower. They're afraid to ask those tough questions. They're afraid to follow up. And coming back to what I said earlier about losing some of the traits that made them successful, the skill set they once had as an executive at times tends to move away to too much cowering, not asking of questions, and acceptance rather than pushing. And these are tendencies or problems that could lead to people getting shorter sentences in prison. Don't buy into the nonsense. Learn to ask better questions. Some do, some don't. I think that comes back to that being predisposed to do the work. A couple of more here I mentioned in this. Their career impact. There's this idea the white-collar criminals are arrogant and entitled and unwilling to do jobs that are beneath their skill set. Some, I suppose, but the lion's share of them in our experience are willing to embrace and start over. I interviewed Alec yesterday on our team, who mentioned his job coming home working in a sales room or mail room, making phone calls. I picked up phones in a real estate office. We have people now who have MBAs and doctorate degrees who work at jobs well beneath their skill set, and they're grateful for the opportunity. So I really hammered home in this white collar crime documentary that people presume white collar people are arrogant and entitled and would not do a job beneath their skill set. Some, no, many are willing to start over, embrace the process, express gratitude for that opportunity. And I think that's something that surprised them. But it's never surprised me because I served time in prison. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I know people they're willing to start over and do the work with humility and grace and finding value in work, because all work is honorable. I could list 100 things. I won't. I'll list one more. I have found 99% of the people with whom we work to be really honorable, a pleasure to work with. Some of my closest friends. In fact, today's January 10th. In a week, I'm going to go golfing with 3 former clients. We're going to go play 18 holes together. And some serve longer sentences than the other. Our business now is more structured if you retain our team with the scopes of work and this. But when I came home from prison, I didn't have any of that. A guy would call, I want you to help me. What does it cost? I would tell him. He's like, hey, can we get started? I'll send you the money in a week. I'm like, sure, sounds great. And they always did. There are some people who wouldn't follow through, who would perhaps take advantage of the work or do something that wasn't cool. But that's the case like in any business. And I would argue like the success we have of people honoring and following through on their commitments, whether it's, yes, we're going to proceed together, it's going to a few days, or yes, we're going to proceed together, I just need a little bit of time, or yes, I know payment is due on this date, but something happened, my bank fired me, I need a few weeks. 99% of the time it happened. And I would argue that is a higher ratio than people who were not involved in the criminal justice system. So I love the integrity of our clients. I love that they all follow through. And that too is something surprising to people in this white collar crime documentary, because they presume, coming back to, I think, number 2, being born bad. If you defrauded someone once or broke the law, it's simply going to continue. That has not been our experience, at least with us at White Collar Advice. So those are 10 things I have learned in working with so many white collar defendants since 2008. I hope you found value in this video. Again, Happy New Year, and thank you for joining our community. Super grateful to help you. Goodbye.